Welcome back to the Morning Grind. Dean, once again with you. Today, we're talking golf before we get into our guests, before we get into the actual golf content as far as the $1 million contest this week going down in DK. Do want to mention we are celebrating our 10-year anniversary here at RotoGrinders, and part of that celebration, we're giving away some free stuff. Good times. The PGA lineup HQ is free this week. You can build, I believe you can build up to 150 lineups in a free roll. That's going to be on FanDuel as well, which is $5K as well, too. So build those lineups, have at it as far as Lineup HQ, figure out how that works. And, well, how does the Lineup HQ feature work? How do I build 150 lineups? This is what you do. You watch the PGA Build Show, which is also free. I believe this week it's featuring Tambo and SDL cards. Have at it. Good times. Get a good feel, get a good read as far as I know very little about golf, and I watch these shows, and they just give me a good grasp as far as what's going on. And one of the people that have helped me with that, number 13 ranked overall here at RotoGrinders, PGA specific. It's TJL5124. It's TJ Laessig. TJ, what's going on, dude? A long introduction. I apologize for making you wait, but got to get the information out to the people.
Absolutely. Yeah. 10 years is a big deal. Happy to be back on the show with you here. Looking forward to another weekend of PGA DFS, playing the same course back-to-back, which is, I'm sure as everyone's talking about, a unique situation, but excited to get into it here. Return of Tiger, so good stuff ahead.
Yeah, we're going to run it back. They're doing a little bit of tinkering as well, too, as far as the course. We'll dig into that in a second. Do want to mention also, speaking of free shows, and this is always free, right? Yourself and Tambo, I believe you guys are always on YouTube with a lineup review, basically talking about what happened in the previous week, dissecting winning lineups, and I guess your lineups as well, too, I suppose. Well, I'm just guessing. I didn't watch it. You tell me. What happened on your show with Tambo that's on YouTube?
Correct. Yeah, this was the first week that we did it. We'll be doing it every Monday going forward. Do just a little bit of a look back on the previous week. We'll go through some of the big contests. We talk about the Millie Maker winner, talk about their lineup, the construction, kind of try to do a reverse engineering of what that person may have thinking, talking about ownership. And then we'll go through some of the others. We'll go through the $5, the 555, the 3K. So get a little bit, hit each of the different stakes, talk through the winning lineups, talk about the person that won and not just their winning lineup, but also how many entries total they had into the tournament and that kind of thing. So pretty fun show. And I think reviewing the process is an important part of any winning DFS player.
Did you learn anything from that? I'm sure obviously you're a sharp guy, you know this really well. But you probably gained some information by digging into that as well. And what did you learn the last week? And also, how did last week go for you?
Yeah, there's always something to learn, I guess. First off, not the best week for me. Last week, my main lineup only got 3 of 6 guys through the cut, which is never going to end up in profit. So
you sent out 3 tweets, right? 3 angry tweets?
Yep, 3 angry tweets at each of the golfers, of course. We're talking about Max Homa before the show and the tweet that he had sent out. So he was one of my guys in my main lineup that missed the cut. But yeah, the lineup review process, definitely interesting. I think one of the things we talk about is as you get into the different buy-in levels and the different number of people in the field, you see the Millie Maker lineup, for example, how much more off the board it is. I think they had like a 0.7% owned Charlie Hoffman in that lineup. Versus when you look at the winning lineups in like the 555 and the 3K, it's a much more like, okay, yeah, I could see myself making that lineup, and there's not as many off the board plays. So just talk about different strategies for different tournaments, different buy-in levels, field size. It's a good time.
It was correct me if I'm wrong. It was a single bullet, right? The one the Millie Maker this week.
Yes. Yep. Single bullet. So
that's amazing. $20 and $1 million. That's pretty awesome. And they're running it back as far as the course, which we'll talk about in a second. And of course, they're running it back on DK as well. $3 million total prize pool, $1 million up top. So by my UCF math, that's like, 33% of the prize pool in first. I think we've talked about this previously. I'm fairly certain you're not somebody that's going to be firing at that a ton. Maybe you'll throw your $1 million lineup in there. And it was interesting because I was watching last week. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I made this up. I have no idea. You were on the build show last week with Tambo, and you guys built 150 lineups. And that was kind of taking yourself out of your comfort zone because that's not what you do. But I'm sure, just doing the process, it was interesting for you. And again, that's free this week. That's cards and Tambo. And they always reference cards, and they say he's got a completely different strategy as well, too. I think he has a bigger pool of golfers. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But is that interesting that like 2 different perspectives, you guys both, are successful, but in 2 completely different ways?
Yeah, it was interesting for sure. Like I think I've talked about in the past with you, not an MME guy. So it was interesting to go through that pool. And then we have Tambo, who also very successful player in his own right, but he's completely an MME guy and puts a lot more players into his pool. And Cards is actually the opposite. So Cards, I believe, is like a 20 to 30 players in his entire pool kind of guy, just picks the guys he likes, really takes a stand on them, and tries to have as many combinations of his pool as possible. Whereas Tambo is more take a sprinkle of everyone here and there. Of course, he's taking some people and full fading them, but a lot more. It's very interesting. I mean, when it comes to MME, there's so many different ways that you can go about it. I talked a little bit about how if I were to MME, my strategy would probably be to pick maybe 3 or 4 guys that I really like and go way overweight on them, put 60% of my lineups having these 3 or 4 guys in, and hoping that if those 3 or 4 guys hit, then I have the right pieces around them. So it's an interesting conversation to have, even if I wasn't going to be MMEing myself personally.
That's basically what I did last week. I made 12 to 14 lineups, and I had 3 or 4, maybe 5 guys where I put at least 50%. I didn't hit a lock button anybody, but and in the hopes of if those guys all work, then you're going to have the right combination around them. Of course, I'm not making 150. I'm not firing completely, but and I hand build them as well too. And I'm still learning. I'm still figuring out golf. By no means take my golf advice for what it's worth, but who's going to win out, by the way? Because those 2 guys have 2 distinctly different strategies, Cards and Tambo. And well, Tambo's got control of the button, so I guess he's going to win as far as the build, right? Cards will get shut down. It'll be interesting watching their clash of strategies.
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, Tambo gets the final say on clicking the buttons, but I think it'll be a really interesting show. I certainly will be tuning in. I mean, even if you're not planning to MME, it's still interesting to hear the thought process, because whatever tournaments you're playing, most likely there's going to be some people that are MMEing that tournament. So I think it's just, it's important to understand all of the different mindsets and how all of the different types of players are approaching a given week, and then use that information to best fit your own personal strategy.
All right, enough nonsense. Let's dig into what's going on as far as this contest this week. And like we said, they're running it back. It's the same course with some tinkering. What do we know about the tinkering, and who does the tinkering benefit, and who does it potentially hurt, depending on skill set?
So back at the same course again this week, as we talked about, the 2 primary tinkers course-wise is that they're going to be growing out the rough a bit. So I don't know how much it really grows out over the course of 3 or 4 days, but the rough will be more penalizing. So as a result of that, staying in the fairway just becomes even more important than it was last week. Want guys that are going to be accurate off the tee. And then the second item is the greens are going to be rolling faster. So that, just have, I think, the bad putters have an easier time on the slower greens, so maybe putting becomes a little bit more important. But also, I think with the rough going up, that will also create potentially a little bit more scrambling around the greens, because when people are not hitting fairways, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to hit those greens, and so they'll be in more situations where they have to work on that short game around the greens. So maybe I think it's the same theme as last week in terms of targeting ball strikers first and foremost, but maybe some around the green type stuff becomes a little bit more impactful this weekend.
If I'm remembering our conversation last week, you like the ball strikers and you like the guys that you want to get in the right side of variance of putting. And how does that affect, is that something where are we embracing variance more when it comes to the putters that are just sort of all over the place and hoping they get in the right side of it?
Yeah, I think last week's actually a perfect example. The winner, Colin Morikawa, is one of those classic ball strikers that can't putt. And you look at his stats from last week, he gained, per usual, 12.5 strokes tee to green, but then he also gained 4.7 strokes putting. So when you have a ball striker like that typically can't putt, he has a week where he spikes with the putter. There you go. He takes it down for that number 1 spot. So maybe he doesn't gain all of those strokes putting, but he's still putting in a top 10 performance in that. And so that is kind of that. I unfortunately didn't play Morikawa in my lineup, but that's the theory of playing the ball strikers coming to fruition, where he has a hot week with the putter and he's able to take home that win.
So is he a potential fade because he had like a 1 or 2% outcome last week and now he's going to come back to reality this week? Is that sort of the expectations?
He's an interesting one for me this week. He got a price hike, so he was 9,200 last week, and now he's up to 10K on DraftKings this week. So stronger field, and he went up $800 in price tag. So he's probably a little overpriced, but he's also just playing really solid golf for the most part. He missed the cut at the Travelers, but other than that, he's been pretty solid. I'll probably lean towards a fade this week, but I can't fault anyone for going back to the well. It does seem like the previous week's winner tends to not get a ton of attention the next week. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. There's just so many good golfers this week. It's really going to be interesting to see how ownership ends up.
Yeah, you mentioned ownership. Ownership, of course, is free this week on Lineup HQ, and this is super, super early. We're recording this on a Tuesday. The ownership is fluid for what it's worth. Morikawa, 10K is the asking price on DK, and the ownership projection as of right now, of course, again, this will change, is 14.3%. The highest owned guy, let's talk about the second highest owned guy because this is the most interesting name I suppose. Tiger Woods, 19.7% owned. Currently, well, he's at a 9. I say currently. The price is not going to change. He'll be 9K today, tomorrow, and that lock. What do we do with Tiger? Is that the appropriate price? I was looking at Vegas. He's 26-1. I imagine there's probably a curve to some degree because people just bet Tiger. Is that the appropriate odds? Should it be worse? Should it be better? And, of course, this is his first time on this course, amongst other guys, too. DeChambeau's coming out as well, too. So let's speak to Tiger specifically as far as his chances. And then I'm curious your thoughts as far as guys that are coming out for the first time on this course while other guys are doing it the second time. Again, a little bit of tinkering, but they probably have a slight advantage from playing last week. Tiger first.
Interesting spot with Tiger this week. I think DraftKings putting him at 9K definitely makes things interesting. I was expecting him to be more in the high 9K, maybe even 10K range. So that price tag certainly brings him into play. It's a little bit difficult with the unknowns just because we haven't seen him in several months at this point outside of the match that he did with Phil and Brady and Peyton. So I don't know how much stock you can put into that. For what it's worth, he looked incredible during that. But, I mean, I'm not putting a ton of stock there. But I think Tiger's a pretty good play at that price. Now, yeah, and something like the Millie Maker, I'm sure he's going to get his ownership. People want to play Tiger because they want to watch Tiger and root for him. But I think he's very much in play at 9K salary. I mean, he's certainly not the Tiger of old, but he's still one of the best golfers in the world.
Yeah, I guess DK's screwing with you. Like if they could have put him at 10.5 and he'd be kind of sort of like more ignored, but at 9K, I mean, are you generally a Tiger? I know some guys Noto's a Tiger guy. Like whatever he is, he plays him at least one lineup. Are you generally somebody that plays him? I know you have your guys you like, you guys you don't like. Where are you at in Tiger generally?
So generally, I find that DK tends to overprice Tiger, and they didn't do that this week. So I'm considering him for sure. I think he's like there's a pretty significant tier drop off after him at 9K. So I think he's kind of like the bottom half of that tier from a price perspective. And I mean, I'm 100% a Tiger guy, just huge fan. Even if I don't play him, I'm always rooting for him every week. I just think it's great for golf when Tiger wins and Tiger does well. But yeah, I think DK probably intentionally bumped that price down to create a little buzz. And just in general, I think you've seen it across Twitter, people saying that pricing is quote unquote softer this week. But that's what it's always like with these strong fields. I mean, there's just a lot of good golfers. So I think that will lead to ownership being pretty spread out across the board. So my advice would just be take the guys you like and play them. I wouldn't overthink ownership this week with so many good options on the board.
Yeah, general thoughts. Tiger playing this course for the first time. Buff Bryson playing the course for the first time. I'm sure there's a bunch of other guys that are here just for the first week, didn't play last week. You said it's a stronger field. Do you have any general thoughts? How much weight do you put into, well, this guy played the course last week as opposed to this guy's playing it for the first time this week?
I'm trying not to put too much weight onto that, trying to just treat it the same way as I would with any recent form. I think, especially up at the top, I mean, guys like Bryson, Rory, DJ, Tiger, they didn't play last week, and I'm not going to penalize them for not playing last week. Now, maybe there are some guys more in the value range, I mean, I think a guy like Kevin Stroman popped out to me as someone who seems like a good value off the jump and also played last week and played well last week. So to me, it's a little bit more of a pot sweetener than I'm not going to play someone just because they played last week. But if I already like them and they played last week and played well last week, that certainly gives them a little bit of bump in my book, at least.
So I played a good bit of Cantley last week. I know a lot of the guys here at RG liked him. And am I right in saying that he looks a little bit underpriced compared to the guys around him?
Yeah, that was the first thing that stuck out to me. Cantley was, I think, the most popular golfer last week. If not the absolute most popular, he was at least one of the top 2 or 3 most owned. And he was priced at 10.6. And now he bumps down to 9,800. He ended up having an incredible Sunday, backdoored his way into a T7 finish. So I think he jumps off the board as he'll probably be the highest owned golfer again. I would have, like, I don't see why his price came down. And he also is the defending champ at the Memorial. So he's kind of checking every box that you could look at. And I'm just a Cantley guy in general. So he's certainly well in consideration to me for my main lineup. Similarly with Hideki, I would say the same thing. He also came down in price. He struggled a bit down the stretch last week. Let's see. He ended up 22nd. So not a great finish. I mean, had a typical Hideki week, gained 9 strokes off the tee and lost 2.5 strokes putting. But he's another guy that I think is potentially underpriced in this field. And I mean, that whole 9K range is full of good golfers. Jon Rahm at 9,300. I can't remember seeing Jon Rahm ever that low. I'm not typically a Jon Rahm guy, but that price certainly gets me interesting. There's going to be some really tight decisions to be made this week. And I think, like I said, don't worry about ownership. Pick the guys you like and go overweight on them.
Hey, right in that price, there's somebody you missed. You didn't say. I don't know if you missed them intentionally, but Rose, who he was a disaster last week. A Twitter search tells me that people despise this guy. The ownership projection is certainly low. He's right next to Tiger as far as the asking price. So he seems like an interesting tournament pivot, if nothing else. Yeah, what up with Rose?
Rose. I played him on my main FanDuel lineup last week. I think I tried to play him on round 1 and round 2 showdowns, and I can't get myself to go back to him. I mean, I'm pretty sure last week I said that you shouldn't let one bad week, impact your decision making too much. But I mean, my goodness, I think I saw on Thursday he literally hit 4 chips that went like a couple feet. I don't even know what's going on with him. He couldn't make a putt inside 10 feet to save his life. He was
so we can kind of explain it away with that. Can we explain it away with that? Like he was in the bad side of putting variance. Can we do that or not so much?
No, because I think it was more than just that. Let's see. I'll take a look here. Yeah, he was just horrible at everything. Lost 6 strokes tee to green, lost 2.5 around the green, lost 3.5 putting. Just a horrible performance. I think if you want to play the ownership angle, he's not going to be owned, in my opinion. But I just think there's too many strong golfers around him to go with someone who put on that poor of a showing. And it could be my personal bias. And yeah. I saw that Noto said the same thing in his article. But I mean, I can't take that pain 2 weeks in a row. He's going to be a fade for me.
I think I saw Noto's tweet about they were talking about how much guys should be, or basically saying he should be free this week or something like that. Like nobody wants him, and he's got a lot of stink on him. But like again, if we're going to play the ownership game and you're playing the millionaire and you're shooting for first place, I don't know. Like again, I know nothing. To be clear, if it's not clear, I know very little about golf. I'm lucky to pronounce some of these guys' names. But just from an ownership perspective, and it's my understanding that he was a good golfer at one point, maybe not too long ago. Bust out that Men in Black one and you mind eraser kind of thing and pretend like nothing happened last week. Hey, this 9.1K. I was listening to, we mentioned Tambo. I was listening to his podcast, the Fantasy Golf Degenerates podcast, which I didn't get a chance to listen to the whole thing, but his co-host went on a rant about Brooks. Gosh, I never get this name right. Koepka. Basically implied, I think via a tweet, that Buff Bryson was buff for a very specific reason.
Correct.
He was like shooting up or whatever. I don't know. It basically, there's an implication that he was doing something illegal. There's a reason why he's buff, not necessarily those 72 shakes he's taking a day. What are your thoughts on that? And then I want to combine that with I heard another golfer, was it Bubba Watson maybe, just speaking to the concept of how much it matters your pairing, because like that's like it's my understanding you play against the course, right? But how much do pairings matter? Because I hear people talk about like, oh, you're paired with Tiger, you're paired with this guy, and that's good and that's bad. How much do you care about that? How much do you think it matters to the players?
Couple great points here. So yeah, going back to, first off, I did listen to that podcast as well, and Kenny Kim absolutely went off. he was going crazy. If anyone hasn't listened, I recommend. He spent like the first 5 minutes of the podcast going off on a rant about how he lost respect for Brooks Koepka. But yeah, basically Koepka tweeted out some sort of GIF that was, so Bryson had the incident where he was unhappy with one of the cameramen for, I guess, following him around after a poor shot. And so Brooks's tweet was basically implying that was roid rage. And that's why Bryson freaked out there. So, I mean, obviously, I think everyone knows by now, Bryson is the number one topping in golf, just with the way he's hitting the ball and the way he's bulked up over quarantine and averaging 350 yards off the tee. So, yeah, everyone was excited for a Brooks-Bryson pairing this week. You would think that'd be the easiest thing in the world for the PGA to do, and they didn't do it. They didn't put them together. So I think everyone's a little bit disappointed that we're not going to get that on Thursday.
How do they decide though? Like they do it for entertainment purposes, just to they want these guys to be for the most interesting pairing possible. Like, is it random drawing? How do they decide the pairings?
No, they pick the pairings for the first 2 rounds. So I don't know them. I think Tiger and Brooks might be together. So they basically pick the featured groups, and these will be the groups that if you go on to the NBC Sports Gold app or whatever it's called, you'll get to see every shot from those groups. And so everyone was assuming that, okay, of course, no brainer. They'll put Bryson and Brooks together in the same group. That unfortunately didn't happen.
Ratings.
Yeah, for the ratings. And then once you get to Saturday and Sunday, the groups are based on the leaderboard, right? Yeah. So obviously on Sunday, we know that the leaders are teeing off last. So yeah, they tend to put the big names with the big names early on, just so that they can use that for TV ratings purposes. And going back to the Bubba Watson comment, someone had asked him a question 2 or 3 weeks ago around whether or not who he plays with has an impact on his game. And he seemed to say that, hell yeah, it does. So I was a little bit surprised to hear that. I would have assumed, like you said, that you're just playing yourself against the course. But I guess it depends on the personality. Bubba's kind of a laid back guy that just likes to go out there, have a good time, maybe joke around a little bit. So I think that there's some guys that if you're playing with them, you have some interaction, you have some conversation throughout the round. There's other guys that they're just focused on them and they're just playing their game. And so, and there's other guys that play slow. I mean, that's another thing that Bryson is well known for, is just being a slow golfer and taking a lot of times on every shot and a lot of decision making. So I don't really look at the pairings or let that affect my decision making. But maybe
I just thought it was an interesting conversation. They asked Bubba, and he said, you want the PC answer or do you want the real answer?
Yeah,
he's like, I'll tell you the real answer. But and then he shot a 79 in round 1, and people were trying to connect the dots and was saying, maybe he was talking about this guy, whoever he's paired with. He was a disaster last week. I don't remember who the guy was. You probably know who he played with, but maybe if you ever see him with this guy going forward, you kind of cross him out. You put a little X by him or something. Lineup construction this week. You're talking about guys being, it feels like kind of a soft from a salary perspective. And you talked about liking a lot of guys in the 9K range. Of course, DeChambeau, the way he's been hitting is absolutely incredible. And I think he's the odds-on favorite, 10-1, 11-1 or something like that in the sportsbook right now. Actually, it's Thomas. I misspoke. Thomas is not 9.5-1, and DeChambeau is 10.5-1 for what it's worth. They're basically co-favorites right now. How much do we want to grab DeChambeau, or how much do we want to focus on guys in the 9K? What's your general lineup construction this week?
Definitely an interesting week with the strength of the field. For me personally, I'm leaning towards grabbing 2, maybe even 3 guys from the 9K range. Like I mentioned briefly before, I think that the drop-off from the 9K range to the 8K range is pretty significant in terms of just win equity. I think that there's plenty of good golfers in the 8K range for sure, but I think once you get into the Tiger, Brooks, Jon Rahm, you get a lot more win equity. So I think that I think we'll see a lot of different constructions. I think one will definitely be you can have 3 9K guys and then fill around values from there. You'll also see people going up to the top that want to play Bryson in particular. I think he'll be the highest owned of the 10K plus guys. And then if you're going to Bryson, it's hard to go Bryson and a 9K guy. I mean, you can Bryson 9K guy and then seek out some value there. So I haven't finished or published my value article this week, but I'm going to try and bring in a little more lower priced guys than I did last week and focus really on 7,500 and under, just because if you want to get a Bryson or a Justin Thomas or a Rory into your lineup, you may need to dip into the low 7Ks and maybe even the 6Ks. So I think it's an interesting week. I don't think there's one clear optimal construction. I think there's a ton of different ways you can go, which makes for a really interesting tournament week in specific.
Yeah, live in a world with salary cap. Can't just load up on all the expensive guys. Give me your article is not out. Of course, it's premium as well. That was free last week, but just give me one guy. Give me one guy you're writing up. You're writing up a bunch of dudes. Give me a tease. Give me one guy you like that's a cheapie.
I think Adam Hadwin I think he's getting a little bit of buzz too. So this isn't, maybe I can give one more off the board one too, but Adam Hadwin at 7,400 seems like someone that is coming in and is pretty underpriced. He was 8,200 last week, and I think he finished like 30th or something like that, 35th. So didn't really do anything spectacular, but also nothing bad, and goes from 8,200 down to 7,400. And he was someone that a lot of people considered and played in their cash game lineups last week. So I think at 7,400, he's a pretty solid option. He's made all 4 of his cuts since the restart and is just a pretty solid all-around golfer. So I could see right in that mid 7K, like him, and I mentioned Kevin Streelman briefly. I can see those two being popular guys. As we go a little bit lower, I think 2 really interesting ones are guys that everyone wanted to play last week and then just totally blew up. And we have Harold Varner, who we talked about last week, and then Joel Damon. So Damon was 7,700 last week. Varner was 7,500. They're both 7,100 this week. And I mean, Damon was horrible last week in just about every sense of the word. And that's not typical of him. He's typically a guy that is pretty steady, a guy that makes a lot of cuts, a guy that's great with his ball striking. But I mean, he lost 10.5 strokes tee to green and 5.5 strokes putting. So, I mean, that's just horrible performance. And nobody's going to want to play him this week, or maybe they will. I'm actually very curious to see, because everyone played him last week. He has one bad week. Is everyone going to jump off, or are people still going to play him? I'm definitely scared, because I played him last week and it was just dead from the start. But him and Varner are interesting ones and probably good ones to go back to in tournaments if nobody's going to want to play them.
All right, so not giving anything away that's not already been given away. The lineup HQ is free this week. Yourself, Noto, Cards, Tambo, you guys all have your conviction plays on there, amongst other things. Hadwin's on there as one of your conviction plays. Is this dude live here at 6.3K? This Tyler Duncan character? Was this a misclick, or is this a real person?
So I was asked last week to have all of my conviction plays be value guys, because basically last week, between the 4 of us, we all picked very similar guys. Like, I think we all had Cantley. So they told me to focus on lower priced guys. So, and I haven't fully finished them. I only have 2, and now there'll be more coming up shortly, so everyone will be able to see those. I'll also add some more color right up there. So, yeah, Tyler Duncan is someone that I have played previously this year and has been pretty consistent since the restart. I think was 4 of 4, made cuts. And again, I'm not necessarily recommending these guys as safe plays, but just trying to sprinkle in some cheap values for if you find yourself in a situation where you need some guys that are under 7K and you need to fill those spots. Where should we be looking? So that's kind of the backstory there. Puts me in a tough spot, I guess, because of course anyone that is that price is always live to miss a cut. But
Yeah.
at the same time, nailing those value plays is key. I mean, that Chase Seifert last week was like top 5, and he was 6,200. He was actually a guy that I played in my main FanDuel lineup at stone minimum 7K last week. So it can certainly happen. Some of these lower priced guys can pop up and have a good showing, and is definitely key to building a winning lineup. So yeah, Duncan's definitely someone I'm considering on both sites, and I often like to go with some cheap guys on FanDuel. So definitely in play for me there. I think he's 7,500 on FanDuel.
Yeah, and DK, you have 8.3 per player, and if you throw him in there, now all of a sudden you get 8.7 to play with. And if you have a lineup where you have your 3 studs or your 3 9K guys, and he makes everything work, he makes that salary cap work. I guess all he's got to do is make the cut, basically, right? I think.
Yeah. One other interesting strategy note for this week is that last week I think there were 155 people in the field, and this week there's 133.
Oh.
So 20 less players, which obviously makes it a lot easier to make the cut. So I would anticipate, again, it depends on how the chalk goes, but I would anticipate a higher 6 of 6 rate than we've seen recently, because now you're at the point where 50% of the field is making the cut versus 40% or whatever. So I think that is a difference as well. And I think last week we had talked about the implications of the cut change rule from top 70 in ties to top 65. And that, I believe, was a direct impact again last week, because I think the cut line was like top 67 or 68 or something. So again, like Max Homa would have made the cut if it was last year.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have had to make that tweet. You would have had 6 of 6. You could have been a millionaire.
Yeah, well, I didn't play that contest, but I could have been like maybe a thousandaire or something. I don't know. So one more guy that's popping here in the lineup HQ, a guy that I played last week. I think he got a price hike, but I guess it's not too much higher. I guess it's fair enough. Well, your thoughts on Gary Woodland?
Yep. Yeah, Gary Woodland was a solid play last week. I think he came in at like 25% ownership in a lot of contests, so he was a pretty chalky play and ended up with a very strong finish. I think he found himself into the top 5 after Sunday. He's a guy that is typically a great approach player. He's a guy that a lot of people like to go to on a course where you can take less than driver off the tee. I think when Gary gets the driver in his hand, he can be a little bit all over the place. But if he can take a 3-wood or an iron off the tee, he's a very strong approach player. So he is certainly in play again this week. I mean, it's worth noting he gained 7 strokes putting. So definitely had a hot putter last week. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. He was 8,300 last week. He's now 8,600. It's a stronger field. I think people will go back to him. But like I said, then, he's so close in price to like Tiger and Brooks. So it's tough. I just think that a Tiger and a Brooks has a lot more upside and win equity. But I mean, Woodland was top 5 last week, so he can certainly do it too. He's definitely a good play and somebody that people will be on.
Give me a big name that you're most likely not to be on. You reserve the right to change your name, to change your mind as the week progresses. Of course, we're recording this on a Tuesday. And you basically, my understanding, you have one main lineup. Of course, also changes depending on the site, salary, yada, yada. But is there somebody that is a pretty big name that you're probably not going to land on, for whatever reason?
I think Dustin Johnson is a little bit overpriced this week. I know he won recently. I guess it was in his last time out. He got the win. And, I mean, I think he was recently priced in the 8Ks. He was like 8,500, and nobody really wanted to play him. And then he gets a win, and now he's 10.3K in the strongest field that you could basically possibly see. So I think that is overpriced for him. Now, granted, he was the best player in the world for a while, so maybe he's back. But prior to that win, he was definitely struggling a bit. So I think that he's somebody that I'm not super interested in. I'd rather go up above him to get into the Rory Bryson type of range or get down into the 9K guys. So he'll be low owned, though. I don't think a ton of people are going to go there. So,
yeah, for what it's worth, ownership projection, I'm looking at it right now, is amongst the elite prices, he's got the lowest ownership projection all the way down to 9.2K for what it's worth.
So that doesn't surprise me.
Have you taken a peek at the Vegas odds just yet? Have you had a chance to look at that?
I have, yeah.
So what are your thoughts? Give me some winners. Who are we firing at?
I think this is a week where one of the stud golfers is going to win. And when I say stud golfers, again, I'm thinking that like Tiger and up kind of range. So somebody that's 30-1 or shorter. That's, again, my personal view. I just think that when you get in these strong fields, it's so hard for, somebody that's 100-1 to beat all of these golfers in one weekend. I mean, we even saw it last weekend, right? The final three down the stretch, you've got Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa, and Victor Hovland. You've got three guys that were all 30-1 or shorter down the stretch. And I just think that with a field this strong, that's what we'll end up seeing. So that said, let me checking out the prices here. I mean, Rahm seems like a good outright bet kind of guy. I talked about that with him a little bit last week, where he hasn't been great lately, but he's also the guy that can just spike and get a top five or a win out of nowhere. And I think he's like 22-1 or something like that. So
20-1 currently on DK.
20-1. Okay. Yeah. So Rahm's an interesting one for there. I mean, like you said about Tiger's always going to be overpriced, I would say, just because people are going to bet Tiger no matter what. So it's tough to get odds that you like on him. I think it's interesting week to bet Rory. What's Rory at on DK?
13-1.
13-1. Yeah, I mean, he's maybe Bryson has overtaken him as the best golfer in the world, but you don't often get Rory at 13-1. Usually he's 10-1 or shorter. So if you want someone that's really short odds, I think Rory is an interesting one to look at. I also like Cantley again. So, but yeah, I would really say let's see. I can look at some of these lower price guys, maybe like a Patrick Reed at the 50-1 type of range. He was all over the place again last week. I played him in Showdown, and then he was just horrible. That was a nightmare. But I mean, if he eliminates those bad rounds, he has the ability to go low. So for someone that's like 50 and longer,
hey, Rose is 60-1.
Rose is 60-1. Wow, that's actually. Oh man. I mean, that's the kind of guy that you want to target in the long, in my opinion, because he's a elite type of tier golfer that, I mean, 60-1 is not a bad number for him. I can't do it just because he's dead to me after last week, but Paul Casey is another one. I like Paul Casey. What's he, 70-ish?
70-1.
Yeah, I like that as well. I also like him as a DraftKings play at 7,900. Another guy that can't putt.
I was going to ask who's going to win, but it sounds like you think Rory has got the best chance to win.
I mean, I think Bryson, but that's that's the chalk pick. I still think he has the best chance to win. And if I had to pick three guys, I would say Bryson, Rory, and Cantley are my three favorite. But they're also three of the favorites. But I really do think it's a week where one of the best golfers is going to win this thing. I think, especially with the course playing a little tougher, like tougher courses always yields the better golfers rising to the top, the guys that are going to avoid the big numbers, the guys that are going to get up and down for par when they need to. When you have some of the more birdie fest type of weekends, that's more when anyone can come out and get a hot putter and win. So I think that the course should be a little bit more challenging, which should allow the top end golfers to rise toward the top come Sunday.
All right, let's play the tiers. First tier.
All right.
We got DeChambeau.
I haven't looked at this at all yet, so let's do it. Let's be blind.
DeChambeau is the three-man, the first tier. Justin Thomas, DeChambeau, and McIlroy.
Oof. I think I'll go Bryson here. I think Bryson is just too good right now. I mean, all three of them are amazing plays, but let's go Bryson.
Cantley, Rahm, Dustin Johnson, Hovland, or Brooks K. I can never get that guy's name right.
Tough one.
Koepka, man.
Koepka.
I know it's not how it looks.
Just like ignore the O, basically.
You know what? That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Did you forget the names now? It's Cantley, Rahm, Johnson, Hovland.
Let's go Cantley. I was on him last week. I'm going to be on him again this week. I'll continue to plant my fat flag with Cantley.
They got Tiger in the third tier. Tiger, Simpson, Morikawa, Matsuyama, Justin Rose, and Xander.
Ooh, that's a fun one.
Schauffele. Did I get that wrong?
Schauffele.
I got that wrong again. Unbelievable. Yeah, I got that wrong last podcast. That's a throwback that I was listening back-to-back weeks.
I mean, it's the return of Tiger. Let's get Tiger in there. Why not?
Boy.
Us and everyone else.
Woodland, this is tier 4. Woodland, Reed, Fitzpatrick, Kuchar, Fowler, Jason Day, and feel free to add a nugget or two, if any of these guys it's worth mentioning, interesting as far as the course, as far as our recent form and all that.
Mm-hmm. So we talked about Woodland a bit. Definitely like him. Fowler, I mentioned I'm not a huge Fowler guy. I think Woodland maybe is the best in this, but let's go with Patrick Reed. I think I still just see a big week coming for him in the future, and I'm going to probably keep playing him and complaining about it until he has that big week and makes up for it. So I like Patrick Reed. I think he's just the guy that has that ability to go low. He's a guy that's good around the greens, and when the course is playing a little bit more difficult, he'll be able to get those up and downs. So Patrick Reed.
It's the martingale strategy, right? Eventually.
Yeah, exactly. Keep doubling down. It's got to hit something.
Burger Answer, for what it's worth, I saw looking very popular from an ownership perspective, at least on Tuesday. Of course, ownership doesn't matter in the tiers. He's 8.5K. Burger Answer, Casey, Banu, and Neiman. Who's interesting here?
We didn't touch on Burger at all. He's an interesting one. I mean, he's been hot so far this year. I haven't been playing him at all, but I mean, the 2 starts he's had since the reset, he got a win and a 3. So he's an interesting one. I haven't heard too many people talk about him, so I'll be curious to see how that plays out. Tony Finau is a guy that I always am on. He just always kind of falls into that value range for me. He's a pretty decent ball striker, pretty decent on approach. Sanjay M is just not quite doing it for me lately. He's struggling a little bit on his approach in terms of proximity. Like when I'm following him on Shot Tracker, he seems to have a lot of 30-footers for birdie, which is not what you want. You want the guys that are in there a little tighter. So, but
is that accurate? Because I hear Shot Tracker is all over the place.
That is true. You get some wild stuff there. You can't always trust it. But Abraham Answer has been my guy a bit this year. So I was saving him for last because he's the guy that I like the most in this tier. I think.
Why is golf so terrible at their presentation? Strong. I know it's not your. I don't know how you answer that.
Sunday wasn't even on TV. You had to watch on the app. That's crazy.
What's on instead? Are they just talking during the broadcast, or they're not showing any action, or what? What's going on?
I know. So because there was weather later in the day, they moved all of the tee times up to be earlier.
Yeah.
And typically, the golf coverage won't start until 2 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah.
And so I guess because of that, they just didn't have an open TV slot, and so they just put it on the app. They couldn't mix around the friggin' news or whatever was on. And then you got an amazing finish and a playoff. It's crazy that they could not find a way to get that on TV somewhere.
The Golf Network couldn't make that happen somehow? I don't understand.
And then when you watch it, they just kill it with commercials. I mean, it's awful. I feel like you just get crushed with commercials, and I think there's so much opportunity for showing more golfers, more shots. I think that they should be doing more with the cut sweats on Friday. We could go on a rant about this, but I think it's a known thing across the industry that they got to find a way to do a better job here if they really want people to get into golf, especially with live betting. There's a huge opportunity here. And now more than ever, when at least for the next week or two, golf's the sport right now, and it's going to have its competition coming up as MLB and basketball get back running.
Yeah. And Bowie, why is there not a golf red zone? That would be amazing, wouldn't it?
That would be fantastic.
Okay, I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the first person to think of this. That seems like a really simple idea.
Nah, believe me. I mean, maybe it must just not make sense from a money perspective, but I don't know. Throw GoPros on the caddies or something. I've heard people say that. Just throw a GoPro on the caddy. Like, I don't know. It doesn't need to be perfect footage. Just let us see what our golfers are doing.
Yeah, you don't need an announcer. You just sort of show what's going on. Like, you have some graphics on the screen or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever. It seems kind of silly. I wasn't looking for it because I was not live. I had 5 of 6. But if I had 6 of 6 and I had a good lineup, I would try to watch it. I typically don't want to. I don't watch golf unless I'm live, unless I have something.
Yeah.
But it's just weird. They don't. And again, there's a bunch of new eyeballs on it as well too. All right. Last year, I'll just give me some factoids or tell me who jumps out. I'll pick somebody blind or based upon that. I don't want to pick a lineup and let it be known. But we have Redmond, Garcia, On, Spieth, Horschel, Leishman, Sabatini, and Ian Holter.
Yep. Interesting range here. So Doc Redmond did not play last week, but he was a guy that had been pretty hot prior to last week and somebody that I have been on. So I've been taking another look at him here. He's just a guy that's a solid ball striker and has been playing pretty well recently. Sabatini was a guy that I wrote in my article last week. 2 weeks ago, he had a Joel Damon-like performance and just played horribly and missed the cut. And then one of my things was that you can go back to him last week at low ownership, and I think he came in at like 2 or 3% owned, and
he crushed.
He struggled on Sunday, but he still ended up in 17th. I think he was in the top 10 going into Sunday, and then shot over par. But he had multiple eagles and a couple other eagle looks. So I think Sabatini and Horschel are in that same boat. They both had good showings last week and didn't change at all from a pricing perspective. So I would say that those two and Redmond are the guys I like in that range. I think I've given my take on Spieth, that not a big Spieth guy. And then, Ben On. I played Ben On last week, and I might have to quit him. Just too frustrating to watch. I mean, he put one in the water and then dropped, and he was like 40 yards away, and then he put it in the water again. Like, come on, you can't put it in the water twice on one hole. So,
well, doesn't he drop it at the spot where the water is, or he took the? I played a lot of like golf on the video games. Like, can't you just put it where he's still getting it past the water the second time?
Yeah, exactly. Hence the frustration. And then he's like 6 under on the front 9 on Friday, and then gets himself within the cut line, and then like bogeys 2 holes on the back 9 to miss the cut. So just brings in the full. You think he's dead on Thursday. He teases you on the front 9 Friday, and then misses the cut anyways. So he's a roller coaster, but I'm sure I'll forgive him one day.
Much appreciate your time talking about this upcoming contest. Give me your final thoughts. Anything maybe you want to reiterate? Anything we may have missed? Final thoughts as far as this tournament this weekend.
Going to be an awesome tournament. We've got, I believe, 48 of the top 50 ranked golfers in the world. Everyone except for Tommy Fleetwood and Adam Scott is in the field. We've got the return of the big cat, Tiger Woods. We've got Bryson back. We've got the Bryson Brooks narrative. There's a lot going on here. We've got the old guard guys, and we've got the new hot shots, Morikawa, Hovland. Exciting week overall. Again, so many good players that I don't think ownership is going to get too crazy on any given person. So pick the guys you like, play them, and good luck, everyone. Excited for another great week of golf. I think we're going to have another exciting finish on Sunday, just like we did this past week.
Also want to reiterate once again, if you're not aware, if you didn't catch it the first time around, I'm not really sure how you just catch it at the end, because you probably listened to the whole podcast through. Maybe you jump in the middle. I don't know. But Lineup HQ, it's free. It's free this week here at RG. Projections as well, all the good stuff there, all the goodies at Lineup HQ. The PGA Build Show Wednesday night, STL cards and Tambo, that's free as well. They'll show you how to build about 150 lineups, and you can do that for free in the free roll that we are running as well too. The link, I believe, is on the RotoGrinders Twitter page. I'm sure you can find it on RotoGrinders.com as well. $5,000 PGA free roll for FanDuel. And also check out TJ's show on Monday with Tambo, the lineup review show. That's up on YouTube, and I'm sure it's up on RotoGrinders.com as well. The RotoGrinders YouTube page. That said, TJ, much thanks for your time. I appreciate it. This was Golf. I was Dean. This was also the Morning Grind. We're out of here. Holler.